Aidan, you are playing an amazing programme at the National Liberal Club. Tell us about that programme and why you wanted to play these pieces.
Thank you. I would say that Beethoven and Chopin, since my childhood, have been my two favorite composers. So I always admired them greatly. And the Waldstein Sonata in particular, I tried to learn it when I was very young, around 12 years old. And at that time, I could play slightly the first movement, but it was a bit too difficult for me at the time. So I always wanted to return to it, and I played the early C major sonata, which I completely adore. And the Waldstein is a bit different. It has a very short, slow movement, which actually replaces the Andante Favori, which was originally written for it. So I always wanted to return to it and find out what to do with it, how to interpret it, because it's really not easy. And with Chopin, for me, he is the greatest composer for piano. And the third sonata I've played for basically all of my life. It's one of my favorite works. And I really feel like now I have my own interpretation of it. So I know how it should be played, I think. And then, the smaller pieces, the Berceuse, I think is extremely beautiful. It's a lullaby with variations. There are so many colors in there that you can create and imagine. And Scherzo also is a piece I played as a kid. And I think it's very interesting what to do with all of the variations there of the beautiful second theme, which always develops and needs a different dynamic plan, which I have carefully worked out.
Yeah, I just want to home in a bit more on the Beethoven. It's a big favourite of mine as well, as it happens. Well, what are the big pianistic challenges in that piece?
Well, as always in Beethoven, the phrasing structure can be quite square. And I think the main issue is to balance the academic details, so the intellectual part of it, with an emotional interpretation which actually takes you from the first note. That's in every sonata, I think, by Beethoven. You need to find the balance. It cannot just be dry playing. It needs a lot of heart also, and a lot of fire. In this particular piece, the pianistic challenges, I would say, is, well, already in the beginning, you have to play these repeated chords, and you should balance them in a way that it doesn't sound monotonous or kind of like a hammer, you know. That's very important. And then, also the second theme is quite difficult with the legato in the chords, I think. Structurally, as Beethoven always does, no sonata is exactly like the one before, so it's very unique. In this case, it's actually mostly fast music, because the slow movement is so short. It's kind of like an interlude between these two massive works. I think the slow movement is very difficult to be convincing, because actually not that much happens, but there's a harmonic development from beginning to end with a kind of dramatic conclusion on this diminished harmony. And the question is, how do you build it up properly? Then in the final, there's obviously the famous octave glissandos, which are really difficult. Some people, they play them with two hands. I think it's outrageous to do that, because it's obviously not how it should be done, because otherwise he would have written it like this. So it's a completely different sound. And the difficulty is also in the pedaling in the beginning, because on Beethoven's instrument at the time, it's very clear that the harmonies blend extremely well. And I also played on the fortepiano. But on the modern piano, you need to really change your approach, I think.
What's it like to move from something as, I guess, extrovert as Beethoven to a whole different world in Chopin? Mm-hmm. Do you have to kind of prepare yourself mentally for that shift of aesthetic?
Definitely. And in that case, I would probably take 2 minutes of going off stage, because I think it's really very difficult to move immediately to Chopin. I've actually tried the combination of Beethoven and Scriabin, which in my view works quite well. But with Chopin, it's such a different sound world, actually. And I think the only way to move in a way that is convincing is to not see them as connected, but really see it as a completely different island in musical history, which it is.
How would you describe Chopin's world that you step into?
Well, it's actually interesting, because for my bachelor research, I wrote it about Chopin and bel canto, which a lot has been written about. And in his letters, he admires greatly the Italian opera singers of the time, who came to Paris and performed Rossini, Bellini, all of this. And he wrote in great detail how this inspired his own nocturnes and song-like phrasings. So I think the piano is, of course, a percussive instrument, but it should sound completely bel canto with Chopin. Even all the fast passages in the berceuse, they should be very singing, very warm, with a lot of color. And I think the way to do that is actually to breathe with the music, really. And the sound world of Beethoven is quite different. It should also be singing at times, but it's very orchestral also. For example, in the third scherzo, the stormy octave theme could sound very orchestral, but at the same time, it needs a more legato sound than in Beethoven, I think.
Now, you've had quite a few interesting career highlights so far, but the one that really leapt out at me is you stood in for Arkady Volodos.
Yes.
No pressure then?
Well, it was a lot of pressure for sure, but I'll tell you how it happened. I took a trip to Amsterdam to see my family. And originally I was just planning to go to the concert because I always admired Arkady Volodos. He's one of my great heroes, one of the best pianists, I think, in the world. Well, then it was, I think, 11:30, and I was in the Conservatory of Amsterdam playing with some friends, some chamber music. And then I got a call from the manager of Arkady, who is also now my manager. And he said, well, how well do you know this list of pieces by Scriabin? Luckily, I played all of them. So I could stand in for the first half of his recital because he was ill. So the next morning, I went to my teacher, Naum Grubert. And we worked through all of it for several hours. And then in the evening, I had to go and play. But some of the pieces I hadn't played in years. In the end, I mean, given everything, I do know a lot about Scriabin. I would say I played a lot of his music. So it was not that difficult to switch. But very stressful, of course. But I think one of the most important moments for me, really.
Did it occur to you to not do it ever?
No. No, I mean, sometimes you get calls with concertos, you know. And if you know the concerto not well enough, then I think it makes sense not to do it. But if you play the solo pieces and you try them and immediately it feels right, then you know when you have to do these things. And yeah, I was really happy to play it next to such a great artist as Arkady.
Oh, that's amazing. I was wondering, what do you feel are the biggest challenges that face you as you build your career?
Well, there are, of course, several. There are musical challenges related just to playing, and there are career challenges related to real-world dynamics, how you handle people, how you handle concerts, how you talk to people after concerts. It's all very important. I think one of the big challenges is to play the same pieces over and over again and keep inspiration. I think it's maybe the most difficult thing of everything. Then another thing is, how do you engage in the right way with your audience? I think it's very important. Charisma and stature when you play. And this, I think you cannot really fake it. You just have to develop it throughout your life. So now I've played a lot of concerts in my life already because I started at quite a young age. So I have experience, but still sometimes it's difficult. You can get nervous and things cannot go well. And you just have to minimize the risk factors and make sure that you can take risks on stage, but you're super well prepared and you know the pieces inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. What things do you find most helpful in facilitating this building of a career?
I think a good support network is essential. You cannot do it alone. I mean, even if you look in sports, for example, I don't like to compare it to sports, but a tennis player has a team of 100 people around him, or maybe even more. So you really cannot do it alone. And I'm really grateful that in Amsterdam and also in London, especially, I have such a great support network. Also with the Imogen Cooper Music Trust. I'm really grateful for everything they've done for me. So that for me, I think is the most important, that you have people to talk to, and also people who don't just give compliments, but are honest with you, even if it hurts your feelings. I think it's important. Only then you can learn.
Yeah, so you really need mentors you can rely on to tell you what's going on.
Yes, and even, I mean, I have some friends that they'll tell me when I've played very well, but sometimes, you don't feel so inspired and it doesn't come out. And then they have to be honest with you. They cannot just say lies, because that really doesn't help, I think. And that's actually harmful.
What would you say are the top, say, 3 qualities that a person needs other than talent in order to become a 21st century concert pianist?
Look, I think it's maybe a bit blunt to say, but I do think talent is quite important. Definitely, musical ability, technical ability. I think some of it is inborn, but if you don't work throughout your life in a disciplined and inspired way, it can go completely to waste, as has been seen many times. I think perseverance, especially, is very important. Courage on stage, musical courage is extremely important. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to play, for example, a Beethoven sonata or a Scriabin sonata well, because you need really to enjoy the thrill of being on stage, because it's really a thrill. And also, I think honesty with oneself when you've played not well, and being able to recover from that, because it does happen, even to the greatest of artists. For example, Rachmaninoff with his first symphony was received very poorly, and he was depressed for almost 3 years, couldn't write anything. So even to the greatest, someone as great as Rachmaninoff, who was really a genius, it happens. So yeah, you have to recover from that and learn from it.
What would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I can't remember who it was by especially, but it was also said by Arthur Rubinstein, and he said, you must only play something that you feel with all of your heart. You must never play a piece that is not yours. And I've heard that throughout my life from my teachers also, and I think it's really true. Because when I play something like the third Chopin sonata, I really feel it with all of my heart. And people, they hear that. Of course, you cannot always play it at the top of your level, but I think that's extremely important, because if you're not completely in it, everyone will feel it, even someone who doesn't know anything about music, I think.
So from your own experiences so far, what piece of advice would you draw to give to other people?
I would not give general career advice. I would give advice to pianists specifically. I would say to know the history and school of piano playing, because a lot of people nowadays, they're happy just listening to the first thing that comes up on YouTube. But I think you need to dig really deep into the archives to pianists like Joseph Hofmann, Rachmaninoff. Need to know about Anton Rubinstein, about Horowitz, Richter, all of these great names. Sofronitsky for Scriabin, for example. If you play Scriabin and you don't know Sofronitsky, you cannot really play Scriabin in my view. So I think that's extremely important to know the history. Of course, there are so many great artists now, but a lot of them were also inspired by this. And yeah, I think it's extremely important. So maybe you can find a recording on YouTube that has 1,000 views, but really says a lot, you know.
It sounds as if you're really inspired by these great golden age figures. What do you love about the playing that you hear there?
Yeah, there's a dimension that is there that is very rare. I think it also has to do with the lack of digital applications. People could focus for way longer. Attention span was longer. It was closer to the time of the great composers. So there was more stylistically and in daily life. It was a totally different way of making music, I think. And the great recordings are, I think, timeless. For example, when I listen to Glenn Gould, you know, I can disagree with some of the things that he's doing, but when I listen to it, it seems really alive and in this time, like it's been just recorded, you know. Yeah,
it's a special quality there for sure. I guess one issue that pursues us all is the kind of turbulent times we're living in and the cost of living crises, these kinds of issues. Do you feel it's still possible to pursue our artistic dreams at such a time?
Well, it's definitely been made for us much more difficult than even before Corona, for example. It was quite different, I have to say. The world has changed, definitely. Also, musical taste has changed quite a bit in this time. But I'm still idealistic. I believe everyone should pursue their dreams. And if you love music enough and you're willing to work hard and you have talent, then you can definitely can and should pursue it. Because I think it's one of the most important things is art in this world. And we need it. So we need as many talents as possible and musicians, I think.
That's great. Aidan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.